Some train stations didn't just close. They swallowed people and never let them go. If you're drawn to real-life mysteries, the kind buried in old maps, police files, and long-forgotten ruins, subscribe to Roadside Tales. We follow the roads where stories were lost, and sometimes never meant to be found. Case 1. The Michigan Central Station Disappearance. Detroit, Michigan. It was once a gateway to the future, rising 18 stories high. The Michigan Central Station opened in 1913 as a grand entry point to Detroit. It was majestic arched ceilings, marble walls, brass chandeliers. For decades, it bustled with travelers and stories. The station had been designed by the same architects who created New York's Grand Central Terminal. It was a beacon of growth, a crown jewel of the city's industrial strength. Presidents arrived here. Soldiers departed for war. Families reunited on its sweeping platforms. But like much of Detroit, the station began to decay with time. As the automobile industry declined and train travel dwindled, so did the station's purpose. By 1988, it closed completely. Its windows shattered, its interior gutted by scavengers. The ticket counters stood empty beneath a cracked ceiling. Case 1. The Michigan Central Station Disappearance. Detroit, Michigan. His name was Ronnie Johnson. He was 26 years old, homeless, sometimes seen downtown with a sleeping bag and guitar. A few coffee shop owners knew him quiet, polite, often scribbling in a notebook. He told one barista he liked the train station, said it made him feel small in a good way. "It's like standing in a giant's rib cage," he once said. Security footage from November 16, 2004, shows Ronnie entering the east side of the abandoned terminal at 3:12 p.m. The door had been chained shut, but it was common knowledge that people could slip in through a broken window near the rear. Ronnie climbed in. His name was Ronnie Johnson. He was 26 years old, homeless, sometimes seen downtown with a sleeping bag and guitar. A few coffee shop owners knew him quiet, polite, often scribbling in a notebook. He told one barista he liked the train station, said it made him feel small in a good way. "It's like standing in a giant's rib cage," he once said. Security footage from November 16, 2004, shows Ronnie entering the east side of the abandoned terminal at 3:12 p.m. The door had been chained shut, but it was common knowledge that people could slip in through a broken window near the rear. Ronnie climbed in and was never seen again. When he didn't return to the shelter that night, no one noticed. It took 3 days before a social worker reported him missing. By then, it had rained twice. The inside of the terminal, graffiti-stained and stripped of copper, was slick and dark. Police did a cursory search. No signs of struggle, no blood, no bag, no guitar, only silence. The footage was the only concrete trace. It shows Ronnie passing between two pillars inside the main concourse. Then, for exactly 11 seconds, he stands still, looking upward. His head tilts, as if he's listening to something. Then he moves toward the west wing. There were no cameras beyond that point. That was the last moment he existed in the world. Police called it a cold case, but others called it something else. Over the next few months, strange reports began to circulate from urban explorers and amateur photographers who visited the station. A woman named Samira claimed she was in the terminal in January 2005, 2 months after Ronnie vanished, photographing old benches when she heard a male voice humming. She called out, no response. The humming stopped. Another man, Nate, wrote on a forgotten blog that he entered the West Wing one night and found a pair of shoes placed neatly at the edge of the atrium. Men's size, 11, No footprints, just the shoes, facing the wall. He left immediately. A former maintenance worker, Dennis, told a local podcast in 2009 that he once saw faint lights flicker in the basement during a thunderstorm, despite the building being disconnected from the grid. He swore he heard footsteps pacing near the old boiler room. When he called out, they stopped, then resumed behind him. By 2006, rumors began to spread. People said the station didn't just echo with wind. It echoed with something else. Voices. Steps. A sudden rush of cold. One group of students from Wayne State set up a night recording session. They left audio recorders in the West Hall for 6 hours. The next day, they listened back. The recordings were mostly static until the 5th hour. A voice whispered, "Don't leave me here." There was no one in the building. The rumors grew. That Ronnie had found something he wasn't supposed to. That someone was living deep in the sub-basement. That he had fallen into one of the collapsed elevator shafts and no one had checked. But there was one detail that resurfaced in 2007 that made the case even stranger. A construction crew, preparing for a potential restoration bid, entered a sealed maintenance closet on the lower floor. Inside was a blanket, a rusted flashlight, and a notebook. The first few pages were unreadable, damaged by water and mold. But one page near the middle had a short entry. It read, "It's so quiet down here it hurts. Something moves when I sleep. It hums." The notebook had no name. No fingerprints. Police refused to say if it belonged to Ronnie. But the handwriting, according to the barista who knew him, looked eerily similar. The notebook was never returned. It vanished again into evidence storage, or somewhere else. In 2010, a group of filmmakers tried to shoot a short documentary in the station. They interviewed former employees, local historians, and even tracked down a retired police officer who had searched for Ronnie. He said something they never put on film. He said, "We didn't find him because we weren't supposed to. That place doesn't give back." Michigan Central was bought in 2018 by a tech company planning to restore it. In the process, dozens of sealed-off rooms were cleared. No sign of Ronnie, but multiple workers claimed to hear footsteps in parts of the building long after others had gone home. One security guard quit after hearing a voice whispering through the vent, "You stayed." Another guard said he found a single size 11 shoe outside the west exit. Nobody ever claimed it. A third worker, interviewed anonymously, said that in one room behind the west atrium, they found childlike drawings scratched into the wall circles with hollow faces and no mouths. The room had been locked from the inside. Today, the station is partially restored. Lights work. Events are held there. But some rooms remain off-limits. Some hallways lead to locked doors that nobody remembers installing. And at night, some say, you can still hear the hum. Faint, low, like someone trying to remember a tune they never finished. Maybe Ronnie found peace, or maybe he never left. Maybe places remember, and maybe some doors aren't meant to be opened twice. Case 2. The Woman in Red, Cincinnati Union Terminal, Ohio. Cincinnati Union Terminal is a marvel of Art Deco architecture. When it opened in 1933, it was hailed as the future of American travel. Trains would roll in under its massive half-dome. Passengers would spill into grand concourses beneath murals of industry and promise. It was a place built for movement, thousands of travelers passing through each day. But time had other plans. By the 1970s, the train industry was crumbling. Airlines rose. Highways stretched like veins across the country, and the terminal, once humming with energy, grew quiet. Eventually, most of it was shuttered. Only parts remained in use: a museum here, a theater there. The rest sat empty, dark, forgotten, until someone found what had been left behind. On February 2nd, 1992, a maintenance worker named Dean McCullough was sent to inspect a sealed corridor behind what used to be the first-class lounge. That part of the terminal had been closed for decades, repurposed as storage and rarely accessed. The air back there was thick, stale, the kind of air that hasn't moved in years. Dean forced open the rusted service door and flicked on his flashlight. At first, all he saw was debris, old chairs, signage, scraps of tile. Then the beam landed on something pale, a hand. It was curled and shriveled, protruding from behind a pile of broken wallboard. Dean froze, then backed out and called security. Police arrived within 20 minutes. What they uncovered shocked everyone. Behind the debris was the partially mummified body of a woman. She had been there for years. No purse, no ID, no matching missing persons report. Her body was wedged awkwardly in a crevice along the wall. Clothing mostly rotted away except for one piece of vivid fabric, part of a red dress. No wounds were obvious, no signs of trauma. The cause of death was inconclusive. Estimated time of death sometime between 1985 and 1989. She became a Jane Doe, but she didn't stay forgotten. Because people had seen her, and not just once. After the discovery, museum staff began reporting strange incidents. A janitor named Elisha claimed she heard footsteps echoing through the shuttered concourse after closing. At first, she thought it was another employee, but when she followed the sound, no one was there. Instead, she found a single red thread on the marble floor. 1 week later, a security guard named Morris saw something more disturbing. He was making rounds near the old baggage area when he spotted someone through a pane of dusty glass, a woman in a red dress, walking quickly toward a wall. He radioed in. No one else saw her. When he investigated, he found only a faint palm print on the glass. From the inside, news of the sightings began to circulate quietly among night staff. Most brushed it off nerves, stories, imagination. But then came the photo. In August 1992, a tourist named Carla took a picture in the rotunda. It was a long exposure shot meant to capture the architecture. When developed, the image showed the arch, the murals, and a figure near the far end of the hallway. A blurred silhouette in red. Carla insisted no one had been standing there when she took the picture, and the location was blocked to the public. Experts dismissed it as photographic error, but those who worked at the terminal weren't so sure. Digging into local records brought more questions. A woman named Lorraine Fields had been reported missing in 1986. She was last seen at the Greyhound station 2 blocks from Union Terminal. She'd argued with her boyfriend that night and disappeared, but her description didn't quite match the body. Lorraine was blonde. The Jane Doe had dark hair. Another lead pointed to a sex worker known only as Red, who frequented the area in the late 80s. She was known for wearing a red dress and was last seen getting into a car near the back freight entrance of the terminal. But no one knew her real name. No family ever came forward. The case faded. But the sightings didn't. In 1998, a museum intern fainted in the West Corridor after claiming to see a woman walk through a wall. Others heard humming or caught glimpses of color that vanished around corners. Some visitors said they felt watched in certain rooms. One child reportedly asked his mother, "Why is the lady bleeding when pointing at an empty hallway?" By 2004, the urban legends had solidified. Locals called her the Woman in Red. Some said she was angry, others said she was lost, but all agreed her presence was tied to the terminal, and that she had never left. One audio engineer working on renovations for the theater inside placed sound recorders along unused back halls to capture ambient noise. When he listened back, he heard something odd. A voice. Soft, nearly inaudible. "I didn't want to die here." He deleted the tape. But the building remembered. A former detective who had once been assigned to the Jane Doe case returned years later. He visited the spot where she was found, just to see it again. He stood silently for a while, then muttered, "It never felt right." She didn't belong here. He never elaborated. Today, Cincinnati Union Terminal is partially restored. It houses museums, holds events. Children laugh in the Science Center. Families marvel at the rotunda. But behind the plaster, in the seams of the walls, there is silence. The kind that listens back. Staff still avoid the far hallway after hours. Security footage occasionally shows motion in empty wings. One video, never released to the public, allegedly shows a red blur moving across a locked gallery. It lasts less than half a second, but that's all it takes. Because sometimes buildings remember what we try to forget, and sometimes those left behind find a way to stay, especially if they never got to say goodbye, especially if no one ever came looking, and especially if their story was never told until now. Case 3. The Screaming Tunnel, abandoned Erie Station, New York. Beneath the quiet suburbs of Niagara Falls, New York, lies a forgotten relic of the Erie Railroad. A short, crumbling tunnel, just under 125 feet long, runs beneath what used to be an active train line. Time and weather have blackened the brick walls, and the ground is slick with moss and runoff. The tracks above have long been torn out. The trains no longer come, but stories still do. Locals call it the Screaming Tunnel. They say if you enter the tunnel at midnight and light a match, it will extinguish, and then you'll hear it, the unmistakable scream of a girl who died there. But this isn't just urban legend. Not entirely. The tunnel was constructed in the early 1900s as part of a drainage and pedestrian access system for the Erie Railroad. It was never designed for locomotives, but workers, school children, and locals once used it daily. By the 1950s, the Erie line began its decline, and by the late 60s, the entire section was abandoned. The land above became overgrown. The tunnel faded from maps, but not from memory. On November 4, 1958, a volunteer fire crew responded to reports of smoke near the tunnel entrance. What they found was a small pile of burning debris, scraps of cloth, partly charred wood, and a melted plastic doll. One of the cloth pieces was later confirmed to be part of a child's dress. The incident was dismissed as Halloween mischief or a failed prank. No one was ever charged. No child was reported missing. But the screams began shortly after. Between 1959 and 1974, Niagara County Police received nearly a dozen separate calls from residents who lived within earshot of the woods that surround the tunnel. The most common complaint, hearing a girl's scream. Not once or twice, but repeatedly, over multiple nights. The screams were described as high-pitched, distressed, and brief. They always stopped abruptly. Officers investigated the area on at least 5 occasions. They never found a source. Then, in 1982, a researcher named Lydia Crenshaw visited the tunnel for a self-funded project on haunted infrastructure. She spent 2 nights camping near the site and recorded hours of audio. In one session, a whisper can be faintly heard saying, "Run." She claimed it wasn't from her or anyone present. The clip, now digitized and passed around obscure paranormal forums, became infamous as the Erie Whimper. Lydia never returned to the tunnel. In her final journal entry, she wrote, "There's something there that wants to be heard, but not seen." Despite skepticism from scientists and local officials, stories about the tunnel continued to accumulate. In 1996, a group of Buffalo University students attempted to debunk the haunting for a school documentary. They spent 6 hours inside the tunnel with cameras, EMF detectors, and thermal imaging. For most of the night, nothing happened. But during the final hour, their thermal camera picked up a human-shaped heat signature standing completely still at the far end of the tunnel. It lasted for 11 seconds. When one of the students approached the area, there was nothing there. No warmth, no residue, just still, cold air. One of those students, now a school teacher in Albany, has refused interviews ever since. His last public comment was, "That wasn't a ghost. It was a warning." Some believe the story of the Screaming Tunnel ties back to a missing child case from the early 20th century. Eleanor Quinn, a 12-year-old schoolgirl, vanished in 1933. She was last seen walking home along the rail path above the tunnel, though her body was never found. One of the buttons from her coat was discovered near the tunnel entrance during a 1940 cleanup. The connection was never officially acknowledged by authorities. Her disappearance, like the others, went cold. A different theory suggests the tunnel was used for illicit activities in the mid-century, possibly bootlegging, gambling, or worse. Old-timers speak in hushed tones of late-night lantern lights and screams heard in the woods. Some suggest that the scream isn't from one girl, but from many, a collective echo of violence hidden beneath the soil. In 2007, an urban explorer named Kyle posted a blog entry about visiting the tunnel on a dare. He brought a matchbook and a GoPro. He said he lit one match and it blew out instantly. The second match stayed lit for 3 seconds before extinguishing on its own. He wrote, "What scared me wasn't the scream. It was how close it sounded, like it was behind me, breathing." The footage was uploaded to YouTube and taken down within 48 hours due to community guideline complaints. Kyle stopped posting online soon after. Then came the social media era. TikTok videos, Instagram Reels, and YouTube Shorts flooded in from 2019 onward. The Screaming Tunnel became a viral destination. People dared each other to visit at night, to stand alone, to light the match. Most caught nothing but shaky footage and nervous laughter. But in 2021, a user named Our Niagara Echo posted a video that sparked fresh fear. In it, they light a candle in the tunnel. The flame flickers, then goes out. A few seconds later, the audio captures a faint, breathy whisper. "Stay." Audio experts analyzed the clip. They couldn't definitively rule out post-production manipulation, but no background noise matched the tone or pattern of human interference. In 2023, a couple filming a paranormal vlog reported that their car battery died shortly after leaving the tunnel. While reviewing footage, they noticed an odd white shape hovering at knee height just beyond the tunnel's center. It moved with them. When they paused, it paused. It wasn't dust. It wasn't glare. It was something. Local officials continued to deny that the Screaming Tunnel is anything more than an urban myth. They claim the acoustics of the tunnel, coupled with wind patterns and psychological suggestion, are enough to explain all occurrences. But privately, some officers refuse to patrol near it after dark. Today, the tunnel remains open. No fences, no cameras, just an arch of brick and shadow beneath a forgotten railroad. Visitors still come. Some bring candles, others bring cameras. A few bring nothing but curiosity. But everyone who steps inside listens. Some say the scream is a memory. Others say it's grief echoing across decades. A few believe it's a warning. Whatever it is, the tunnel waits, and it does not forget. Not the stories, not the names, and especially not the ones who lit a match and stayed too long. Some places lose their purpose, but never lose their voice. The trains are gone, the tracks are buried, but the silence, it still echoes. With footsteps no one sees, screams no one believes, and doors that should have stayed shut. 3 stations, 3 vanishings, and maybe, just maybe, 3 warnings. If these stories stayed with you, there are more like them waiting. Subscribe to Roadside Tales, where the road ends, our stories begin.